Welcome back to my channel. Hello everyone. In today's video, we are diving into the most important science and technology developments from 15 to 22nd June 2025, which is highly relevant for UPSC, BPSC, UPPCS, NDA, SSC, bank and other government exam aspirants. We will cover different current affairs based on science and technology, which is important for each and every exam. Let's get started. First news is about WHO guidelines for sickle cell disease management. WHO has introduced its first global guideline for managing sickle cell disease during pregnancy, especially during pregnancy. Because when the female is pregnant and is suffering from SCD, it impact both mothers and infants. SCD, sickle cell disease, is characterized by crescent sept red blood cell, sickle sept red blood cell, and which obstruct blood flow because of crescent sept or sickle sept red blood cell, leading to different types of health problems. So the risk associated with sickle cell disease escalate during pregnancy. If a female is having SCD, it accelerates during pregnancy, increasing the likelihood of maternal death and fetal complication as well. About sickle cell disease, it is an inherited blood disorder coming from parents to offspring. It causes red blood cell to become rigid, shaped like sickles, and because of this, there is a less flow of oxygen, and it can lead to blockage in blood vessels because of this abnormality. And symptoms include severe pain, anemia, and the sickle cell disease is more susceptible, occurs in the region with sub-Sahara African region because of less health and hygiene factors. Risk during pregnancy, if women is suffering from sickle cell disease, what are the risks? These pregnant women face increased chance of mother maternal death compared to those who are not suffering from sickle cell disease. So women who is having sickle cell disease are having increased chance of maternal death. There are few complication also. The complication name is preeclampsia, and there is adverse outcome seen in her baby, including stillbirth and low birth weight baby, are common. So SCD, when a female is suffering from SCD and during pregnancy, it can increase the risk of high blood pressure. There is a chances of blood clots formation, miscarriage also, and child is after birth, low birth weight, and there may be a chances of premature birth. So the WHO guidelines, they aims to improve these outcomes through targeted care. So in sickle cell disease, red blood cell becomes stiffened, sticky, sickle shaped, crescent shaped. So because of this, there is a less transport of oxygen and the patient suffer from anemia and jaundice. There is complication on the lady who is suffering from sickle cell disorder, because disorder means a collection of many disease. So pre-eclampsia is one of those. Potential pre-eclampsia complication are short-term and long-term. Short-term in this is HELLP syndrome, which is a rare type, but it is also life-threatening liver disorder. Other one is short-term preeclampsia complication include eclampsia involving seizures. Because of this, there is a need of seizures. And other complication is placental abruption, placental destruction. So it means when the placenta detach from the uterus wall and causing women to suffer from heavy bleeding because of the placenta destruction. So these are the short-term preeclampsia complications. Second one is the long term, in which there is a great risk of heart diseases, cardiovascular diseases, kidney disease, even though heart attack, stroke, brain injury, formation of blood clot, high blood pressure. So these are the complication of a pregnant woman having SCD, sickle cell disorder. It might also affect a baby, on the baby health also. The baby specifically a low birth weight. Sickle cell disease is a blood disorder that is passed through with the help of genes, and it results in abnormal hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a part of red blood cell which make the red blood cell red in color, and its function is to transport oxygen to the different body parts. Hemoglobin, heme is iron part and globin is protein parts. But sickle cell disease, the red blood cell becomes sickle cell. So what happened? There is a less surface area and there is a less transport of oxygen. Low oxygen levels in the it transfers to the different cell and tissue. So this sickle cell also becomes stiff and sticky compared to normal. It becomes stiff and sticky compared to normal red blood cell. So it blocks flow of oxygen and leading to different types of tissue damage and pain also. So these blockages over time can lead to organ dysfunction, organ failure, and result in different types of serious medical complication. So type of sickle diseases are hemoglobin SS, hemoglobin SC, hemoglobin beta thalassemia, and beta thalassemia is of two types, beta plus and beta zero. And among these, hemoglobin SS and hemoglobin beta zero thalassemia are chronic type. The patient is suffering from chronic anemia, severe anemia. So hemoglobin SS, it affects around 65% of people. And SS, hemoglobin SS means both the parents carry gene S. Both parents, mother, father, both. And most of all their hemoglobin is abnormal. So hemoglobin SS is called a reason of severe anemia, and it causing chronic anemia and affecting 65% of people. About hemoglobin SC, so SC, one parent carry S, another parent carry gene C. So another abnormal type gene is hemoglobin C from one parent. So it affects around 25% of people. Hemoglobin HbS beta thalassemia, in which people with this form inherited a hemoglobin S gene from one parent, and other parent is having gene beta thalassemia. So beta thalassemia is two type. One is a beta plus, another one is beta zero. Beta plus affect 8% of people, which is of mild type, and beta zero is affects 2% of people, and it is more severe type, similar to hemoglobin SS. So hemoglobin SS and hemoglobin beta zero is more severe anemia causing chronic anemia. Other type is also hemoglobin SD, hemoglobin SE, hemoglobin SO. So S carry one parents, S gene is carried by one parent, D by another parent. Same as hemoglobin SE, S by one parent, and E gene is carried by another parent. Hemoglobin SO, one parent carry gene S, another parent is carrying gene O. So sickle cell disease is not a single terms for any disease. It is an umbrella term for different types of sickle cell diseases. So it is known as a sickle cell disorder. Among these, hemoglobin SS and hemoglobin beta zero thalassemia are chronic type, more severe anemia. And these types of hemoglobin SS and hemoglobin beta zero thalassemia are cause of severe anemia, chronic anemia. So sickle cell disease diagnosis is done through prenatal testing during pregnancy, and this test includes chorionic villus sampling to take the chorionic villus sampling and from immunocentesis. Is there a cure for sickle cell disease? Yes, yes, there is a cure for sickle cell disease. In this, there is a blood transfusion, bone marrow transplants. So these are the process of curing a sickle cell disease. That in these transplants requires a donors who is a healthy genetic match, such as sibling. So when we are taking a donor, donor must be healthy and a genetic match, such as we are taking the donor is a sibling. So, however, only about 18% of people with SCD have a compatible donor. So, this is the case. We are taking a donor as a sibling for stem cell transplantation, bone marrow transplantation. So, treatment for sickle cell disease includes medication, blood transfusion, bone marrow transplantation, gene therapies. And previously and now, sickle cell disease treatment may begin with antibiotics. So symptoms and complication of SCD includes there are many symptoms. Symptoms are anemia, bone pain, end-stage organ disease. It affects eye disease or blindness also, and then genital and hormonal issues also, heart murmur or enlargement of heart, liver and gallbladder issues. So there is a multiple complication because of SCD disorder, sickle cell disorder. In anemia, there is a less able to hemoglobin transports less oxygen, so female is suffering and infant is suffering from anemia, so it includes fatigue, weakness, dizziness, headache, shortness of breath, and chest pain. Bone pain, there may be a complication which is known as a bone crisis. Bone leads to periodic spikes in bone pain, increase in bone pain, and that bone pain can cause a vascular necrosis. And this vascular necrosis is breakdown of it. It is the ultimate breakdown of the bone and joint. Another complication is end stage organ disease. It means multiple organ failures, potentially affecting the kidneys, liver, heart, like that. Other complication is eye disease or blindness. So it can damage the soft blood vessel in the back of the eye, leading to retina damage called retinopathy, and this can lead to blindness as well. There is also another complication, genital and hormonal issues, unwanted erection of the penis, and as well as delayed puberty. So this sickle cell aneuploidy in male penis can cause a persistent painful erection, and and that disease is known as a periapism. So it permanent damage and erectile disinfection. Another complication is heart murmur or in enlargements. Heart will start the sound becomes something abnormal, and that sound is heart murmur or enlarged heart. Infection also, the spleen may be infected at a young age, and if spleen is infected, it will weaken your immune system. And other complication is about liver and gallbladder issues, gallstone formation, liver disease, jaundice because of the accumulation of elevated increased level of bilirubin. So these are the images of the figure A, B, C. In figure A, normal heart, where is the process is normal. Second is the heart with valve defects, and third is the heart with ventricular septal defects. So figure C, heart with ventricular septal defect. So there is a sound of heart murmur. Sometimes it's a normal heart, murmurs occur in normal hearts as well, but it will give signal of some problems of heart also. Some are signs of heart problems, symptoms of heart problems. So specifically, if other signs or symptoms of a heart problem are present, they are indicating avascular necrosis. There is a avascular necrosis in your bone. There's images given about the leg bone, the femur bone, the long bone, and there is a destruction of bone and joint, normal head, and avascular necrosis head. Symptoms and complication of SCD includes, again, that we have seen in the previous slide. Now again is the kidney issue. There is a kidney, there is a blood in the urine, frequent urination. So it is a kidney disease and known as papillary necrosis. papillary necrosis. There is a patient is suffering from frequent urination, and it is a one type of kidney disease. So these are the also complication of SCD. Other is the formation of ulcer. Older children and adults with SCD can develop sores on the lower legs. Older children and adults with SCD can develop sores on the lower leg. There is a acute chest syndrome also, lung disease also, because of the HB red blood cell becomes sickle shaped, so there is a decreased amount of blood oxygen flow. So acute chest syndrome is a life-threatening problem. So it can cause lung injury, difficulty breathing, and low oxygen supply to the different part of body. Other is a problem is complication is pulmonary hypertension, high blood pressure in the vessel that supply blood to the lungs. Pain, there may be a chances the pain in the location such as bones. Another the most complicated issue is stroke. When a sickle cell become when sickle RBC cell becomes sickle shaped, it blocks blood flow to your brain also, to that patient brain also. So this make it harder, difficult for your brain to get the sufficient oxygen, and brain will not work correctly. So this can lead to stroke. About 10% of people with SCD will have a symptomatic clinical stroke. Strokes are most common in people with sickle cell anemia. So this is an image of renal papillary necrosis. Sickle cell disease pathology has given in the image the RBC become sickle shaped, less supply of oxygen, and then decreased deformability, increased fragility, microvascular obstruction, tissue hypoxia, means there is a less amount of oxygen supply in the different parts of tissue. So because of decreased deformability and hemolysis, destruction of red blood cell. Then again, tissue hypoxia, the problem, the less amount of oxygen in the tissue. There is a acute problem and chronic problem also. Acute, there is a chest syndromes, liver, spleen problem. Chronic manifestation is in low multi-organ failure disorder, maybe. So according to the WHO guidelines, it includes over 20 evidence-based recommendations. WHO has given guidelines to provide folic acid, iron supplements to these pregnant women, and there must be management of pain crisis and prevention of infection. Other importance of multidisciplinary care. So there is a need of management of SCD in pregnancy is mandatory. It requires a skilled healthcare team. Skilled hematologists, obstetricians, midwives, and pediatricians are required to take care of SCD during pregnancy. So comprehensive care and informed decision making for pregnant women with SCD is required. So sickle cell disease remains under-researched and underfunded, particularly in relation to pregnant and breastfeeding women. So there is a need to evaluate treatment safety and efficacy for these population. So this guideline is a part of a broader initiative to take care non-communicable diseases in pregnancy like sickle cell disease. Government initiative in India. The government has initiated the National Sickle Cell Anemia Eradication Mission. And investment has been announced to support drug development for SCD, particularly benefiting tribal population. About future direction, the WHO guidelines mark the beginning of a serious focus on managing chronic diseases in pregnancy, recognizing the growing impact of chronic diseases on maternal and newborn health. Second news is about Voyager 1 discovers superheated plasma beyond Pluto. NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft made discovery in the field of space exploration. From nearly 24 billion kilometers away, it detected a cell of superheated plasma at the Heliopause. Heliopause is the boundary where the sun's influence its ends. So these findings sheds light on the different dynamics of heliosphere and interstellar space. About Voyager 1's journey and discovery, Voyager 1 launched in the year 1977 and has been traveling through space for nearly 5 decades. So it crossed into interstellar space on 25th August 2012. Recently, it is reported a narrow region of plasma heated to temperature between 30,000 and 50,000 Kelvin. So this extreme heat is generated, because of the collision of solar wind with the interstellar medium. What is heliopause? Heliopause marks the ease of the heliosphere. What is heliosphere? It is a protective bubble created by solar wind. Solar wind is creating a protective bubble which is known as a heliosphere. So heliopause marks the edge of the heliosphere. It is not a solid barrier but a dynamic region where solar winds meets interstellar material. So the discovery of hot plasma cell, it indicates a complex interaction at this boundary. It is the image of heliopause. What are mechanism of plasma heating? So the heating of plasma occurs due to magnetic turbulence and magnetic compression. As solar winds collides with slower moving interstitial particles, so collision will create energy and they gain energy because of this collision. This process creates a hot region despite the vacuum of space where traditional combustion is impossible because of space is full of vacuum. So this process create a hot region. Magnetic field observations. One surprising aspect of this discovery was the alignment of magnetic fields. Contrary to expectation, the magnetic fields beyond the helipause run parallel to that within the heliosphere. So this finding, because of the finding of the alignment of magnetic fields, it suggests a deeper connection between the heliosphere and the galaxy's magnetic movement environment. There is a deeper connection between the heliosphere and the galaxy's magnetic environment. So there is some future implication for future research. Voyager 1 have implication for understanding cosmic radiation and protecting Earth. They also inform future missions, including the Interstellar Mapping and Acceleration Probe, which will set to launch in the year 2026, and aims to observe the heliopause with different types of modern instruments. About Voyager's legacy and future plans, despite its age, Voyager 1 continues to function and send data back to Earth. So NASA has managed power usage to keep essential instruments fully operating. The spacecraft's finding will guide future exploration into the heliosphere and beyond, contributing to our understanding of different types of cosmic processes, cosmic phenomena. Third news is about novel nanoparticle synthesis method for cancer therapy. So it's a new innovation for treatment of cancer, to combat cancer, to fight against cancer, to protect different patients from cancer. So there is a recent advancement in the field of cancer treatments with the help of nanoparticles. This innovative approach mostly focuses on creating nanoparticles using nanoparticles with a unique cell structure. That nanoparticles with a unique cell structure, which is designed for photothermal therapy to cure cancer, to combat cancer. So this new methods allows for the creation of semi-cells with a nanocup morphology at room temperature. So they are using the use of biocompatible metal organic framework. Biocompatible metal, the metal is using, which is a biocompatible GIF8 as a sacrificial template, which is important for colloidal synthesis. As we know that traditional techniques are often multi-step and requires different types of chemicals. So in this colloidal synthesis, there is a use of biocompatible metal organic framework, name is GIF8. What are the advantages of this new method? This novel approach, this novel method removes the need for toxic etching agents and high temperatures. No need of toxic etching agents and no need of high temperatures. They are using mild reducing agent, that is vitamin C. So this is the reason it is a biocompatible vitamin C, ascorbic acid. So synthesis process is very straightforward, which is requiring no special equipment. And this simplicity improve accessibility for research and different types of clinical application. So novel nanoparticle synthesis methods for cancer therapy uses different types of biocompatible materials and unique techniques to deliver cancer fighting agents directly to tumor cell. So in this way, improving treatment and minimizing side effects as well. So this method using nanotechnology to improve drug delivery, imaging, and targeted therapy in cancer treatment. So methods and materials used are biogenic, polymeric, magnetic nanoparticles, gold nanoparticles, liposome, carbon-based nanometals, metal oxide nanoparticles. So these are the materials are used for novel nanoparticles synthesis. Biogenic, there is a use of biological agent as the name suggests, like plant extract, fungi, bacteria, which are more environmental friendly approach. About polymeric nanoparticles, materials like poly, lactic acid, and ketosane are used to encapsulate and deliver drugs. Third materials used is magnetic nanoparticles, which is used for both imaging and targeted drug delivery. So used for localized tumor destruction, the specific tumor destruction. Next one is a gold nanoparticles are used, which allow for photothermal. Gold nanoparticles use photothermal therapy, which absorb light and generate heat to kill cancer cells. Next materials used is liposome. Liposome is lipid-based vesicles, which is used to encapsulate and deliver drugs with few modification to improve their targeting and stability. Next material used is carbon-based nanomaterials, which offer unique properties for drug delivery and photothermal therapy. Next material used is metal oxide nanoparticles, which can destroy mitochondrial function, and that material is zinc oxide. So it destroys mitochondrial function, mitochondria, which is a powerhouse of cells. So it destroys mitochondria in cancer cell, leading to cell death. So what are the specific application of this nanotechnology? So there is a targeted drug delivery, overcoming drug resistance, enhance imaging with the help of MRA, photothermal therapy by laser to destroy cancer cell, immunotherapy treatments to deliver immune stimulating agents to fight against cancer. There are few challenges and future direction also. Standardization of biosynthesis is important for reliable positive results. There must be a need to assess the long-term safety of nanoparticles in the body. So toxicity studies are required. Clinical translation is also required. Clinical trials is a major step. There must be a clinical trials towards making them available for different types of cancer patients. So it is about the image of a female suffering from breast cancer, normal cell angiogenesis, normal cell dissemination, and cancerous cell apoptosis, cell program death. So novel nanoparticle synthesis method uses optical and structural properties. This characteristic is essential for effective photothermal therapy, which is allowing targeted destruction of targeted cancerous cell with the help of scattering of light, strong absorption and scattering of light in the near infrared spectrum. So destruction of cancer cell with the help of photothermal therapy, which uses strong absorption of and scattering of light in the near infrared spectrum. These optical properties confirm their suitability for medical use. There is some therapeutic efficacy also. It is used in vitro and in vivo assessment, which demonstrates the therapeutic potential of pegylated semicell. So these nanoparticles showed high photothermal conversion efficiency and were found to be non-toxic. So they destroy metastatic breast tumor. Metastatic breast tumors means it is a cancerous tumor which is metastatic, which is spreads to the different body part. Cancerous breast tumors. So they effectively destroyed metastatic breast tumors through photothermal ablation. Ablation means destruction. Metastatic breast tumor. Survival rates in preclinical models. So future investigation will explore the combination of, there must be a combination of chemophotothermal therapy for cancer treatments. Unique optical properties of these semicell may be used in surface enhanced Raman spectrum biosensors, which is a path for advanced biomedical. Next news about advanced therapy for cancer treatment. It is again about the cancer treatment. I have made about already video of cancer type, significance, prevention, risk. One video about cancer I have already made. Advanced proton therapy for cancer treatment. Recently, a team of experts and this team of experts in the United States achieved a remarkable breakthrough in cancer treatments. They successfully used step and shoot spot scanning proton arc therapy. Step and shoot spot scanning proton arc therapy, known as SPARC, to treat cystic adenoid cystic carcinoma. So this method precisely specifically targets tumors while minimizing damage to surrounding healthy tissue. So this treatment is specifically targets tumor tissue also, tumor only, while there is a very less damage to the surrounding healthy tissue. This is the benefit of proton therapy for cancer treatment. The findings were published in the International Journal of Practical Therapy. So about proton therapy, proton therapy is a type of radiation treatment that uses proton to remove cancer cell to eradicate cancer cells. So unlike traditional X-ray radiation, previously we were using X-ray radiation, protons can be controlled more precisely, more significantly, because it is not harming surrounding healthy tissue. This allows for higher doses to be delivered to the tumor. This allows, there is a need of higher doses of proton therapy to be delivered to the tumor, while sparing nearby healthy tissues, while not affecting nearby healthy tissues. This is benefit of proton therapy to treat cancer. So it is a new technique. The technique name is step and shoot spot scanning proton arc therapy SPARC, which is a refined approach to proton therapy. It involves step and shoot method where the treatment machine follows a pre-programmed pattern. So this technique allows for the delivery of radiation in a more focused manner, reducing collateral damage to critical areas. The benefit is also it is reducing collateral damage to critical areas and using focused delivery in a focused manner. Comparison of this technique is the research team compared SPARC with two other techniques. The techniques are SFO IMPT, the current standard of care, and fully dynamic SPARC. Results showed that SPARC reduced radiation exposure to critical structures. SPARCs it reduces radiation exposure to critical structure. For example, radiation to the brain stem was reduced by 10% and to the optical chiasm by 56%. So these are the benefits. Advanced proton therapy for cancer treatment for elimination of unnecessary radiation dose with proton therapy. It is the image of proton therapy, X-ray therapy, and this is a X-ray therapy, advanced radiation with X-ray therapy. So in proton beam therapy, the tumor is given the proton beam to destroy the tumor cells. It releases energy at a single point, at a focus point, and it disappears. So it's not affecting the nearby organs and tissues. In radiotherapy, so the effect it is given this image is this rays are given, and it is a little bit affecting the nearby healthy tissues and organs also. So potentially harming nearby organs and tissues. So X-ray deposit energy along its path. It is about radiotherapy. So what is about patient experience? The first patient who has given a SPARC treatment, photon therapy, was a 46-year woman with who was suffering from parotid gland cancer. Parotid gland cancer, tongue cancer. So over 33 session, after giving 33 session of photon therapy, she experienced only minor screen irritation and maintained her ability to properly eat and properly works. So it has given beneficial output to that lady who was suffering from parotid gland tongue cancer. So this marks a potential for improved quality of life during treatments. About treatment protocols, it involves a sophisticated computer programming that identified optimal spots for proton delivery. So each session included a cone beam computed tomography, which is scanned to track the doses delivered properly. So each session involved a cone-based computed tomography scan to track the doses delivered properly. So adjustment will be made accordingly for weight loss and changes in tumor size during treatments. This point should be taken into consideration. There are advantages of a SPARC. It is particularly beneficial for tumors located in complex anatomical areas such as a skull base. So if a person is having tumors in their skull, in his or her skull, it is a complex anatomical areas. So SPARC is particularly beneficial for those type of tumors. So it allows for precise dose, a specific dose delivery while minimizing damage to surrounding organs and tissues. So it is crucial in head and neck cancer where critical organs are nearby. So it is important to treat cancer cancer near head and neck areas, mean face areas. There is some challenges and consideration also. Despite its many advantages, spark come with many challenges as well because of its high cost. Then traditional radiation therapy, X-ray radiation therapy, its availability also, it access to proton therapy centers, it may be limited compared to photon therapy centers. Proton therapy is not a suitable treatment for all types of cancer. It is also a limitation. It is not suitable for all types of cancer. About future developments, fully dynamic spark is still under development and it requires regulatory approval. It instead requires regulatory approval. So its potential to enhance the treatment precision make it an area of ongoing research and interest in oncology. So what kinds of tumor can be treated with proton therapy? This is about the base of a skull tumor, brain tumor, breast cancer, GI cancer, head and neck tumors, lung cancer, lymphoma, melanoma of the eye, pediatric cancer, prostate cancer, tumors near the spinal cord, retreatment, radiation. So these are the cancer. So proton therapy reduces the risk of growth and development problem in children as well. So proton therapy is an advanced form of radiation therapy which uses a beam of proton to destroy cancer cell and it minimizes damage to surrounding healthy tissue. It is an important aspect of proton therapy. So it is not affecting the nearby organs and tissue. It is particularly beneficial for cancer near vital organs, important organs, or in children due to its precision and ability. So it is it is important for children also suffering from cancer due to its precision and ability to deliver a high dose of radiation to the tumor, not affecting the important nearby, while not affecting nearby organs and tissue. So how proton therapy works? Proton versus photons. Protons, unlike traditional radiation therapy, uses photons or X-rays. Proton beams release most of their energy at a specific range, which is known as a Bragg peak, and then stop, minimizing radiation export beyond the tumor. Its targeting is precisely targeting the tumor with high dose of radiation. It is especially important for tumors near critical structure like the brain, spinal cord, or heart. It is advanced technology utilizing pencil beam scanning and intensity modulated proton therapy to further refine treatment precision, which is given in a highly focused and modulated manner. So there are many benefits of proton therapy. There is a reduced side effects, effective for various cancer, including brain tumors, prostate cancer, lung cancer, head and neck cancer, and pediatric child cancers. Improved outcomes also. For some cancers, such as prostate cancer, proton therapy has shown very high success rates with less treatments, suitable for children also. This proton therapy is suitable for children and is particularly well suited for treating cancers in children where minimizing radiation exposure to developing tissue is very important. Next news is about Air India crash victim identification methods. So in the wake of tragic Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash in Ahmedabad, so there is a demand of DNA analysis to identify lost victims. So it is important in mass fatality events mass mortality events, mass death events, where traditional identification method will not work, may fall. So there is a urgent need of use of DNA, which is considered as the gold standard for such identification, where there is a mass fatality events happened. So what is about DNA collection and preservation? DNA, as we know, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is a genetic base of life, begins to degrade immediately after it begins to destroy. So the factor which is influencing this degradation of DNA is because of the type of tissue and the environmental conditions. So cold and dry, we can preserve DNA in cold and dry environments rather than hot and humid ones. Therefore, prompt collection and proper storage of their DNA are very important. Ideally, DNA samples should be frozen at minus 20 degrees Celsius. So DNA samples should be kept or frozen at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Soft tissue of DNA degrade faster than hard tissues, making bones and teeth preferred sources for DNA collection. So soft tissues degrade very fastly than hard tissues, so bones and teeth are preferred sources for DNA collection, for DNA testing. So what are the reference samples to identify the collected DNA? Reference samples from biological relatives are important to know about the relatives, biological relatives. So parents and children are the best candidate as they share 50% of the DNA. This family connection, biological connection, increases the accuracy of the identification process. So about DNA analysis, it involves different steps to examine and identify DNA, which is often used for identification process. And it involves DNA extraction, amplification, analysis with the help of PCR and gel electrophoresis. So these methods help to analyze a specific region of DNA or the entire genome, complete set of gene. The forensic DNA testing process extraction DNA is isolated from biological sample, and this DNA is extracted from either from blood, semen, saliva, urine, feces, hair, teeth, bone, tissue, cell. This is for any living human. But for date, we are taking the sample specifically from bone and teeth because it degrades slowly. Second process involved quantification. The amount of DNA is measured. We have to measure the amount of DNA accurately. Third is the amplification. DNA is copied multiple times using PCR. Fourth is separation. DNA fragments are separated by size using gel electrophoresis methods. Fifth step is in forensic DNA testing processes, DNA analysis and interpretations. DNA profiles are generated and compared to samples. So DNA analysis steps involves extraction, organic extraction with the help of phenol and chloroform, Telex extraction, use a resin to bind impurities. Solid phase extraction, use a solid medium to separate DNA from other cellular components. Quantification, quantification measure the amount of DNA extracted. This step ensure there is enough DNA for analysis. Third is amplification, using the PCR with the help of PCR methods. So which creates multiple copies of DNA. So it is important for analyzing smaller degraded samples, the sample which is destroyed. So step in PCR is denaturation, annealing and extension. Denaturation, it means separating the DNA double stranded bands, hitting the DNA at very high temperature to separate strands. Annealing means cooling, again cooling to allow primers to attach. Third is extension, using Taq polymerase enzymes to synthesize new DNA strands. PCR, about PCR, I have already made the video. Kindly watch that video. You will understand all the process. Fourth is the separation, which involved the sorting the amplified DNA fragments with the help of gel electrophoresis or capillary electrophoresis. Fifth is analysis and interpretation. to create a DNA profile. So analysis and interpretation, we are using STR, short tandem repeat, which is commonly used today. So it focuses on specific areas of DNA that vary greatly between individuals. STR. Sixth, about the quality assurance, means to ensure the accuracy and reliability of DNA testing. It should be accurate, it should be reliable. So this includes elimination samples, different samples, and controls and standard is required, which is used in the lab to validate result. The result is the positives. Types of forensic DNA testing is serology, in which we are using blood and semen. PCR chain reaction is also used for serology. Touch DNA is also used, which refers to the DNA obtained from skin cell left behind when someone touches an object. Touch DNA. So taking from the DNA from skin. So it is not for the case of the incident happened in Ahmedabad, because all the victims are burnt. Touch DNA for the human beings who is alive. So refers to DNA obtained from skin cells. However, it comes with challenges like secondary transfer, where DNA is transferred through indirect contacts. Third method is a low-level DNA, which is analyzing very small amount of DNA, which is often invisible to the naked eye, not possible to be seen by the naked eye. So modern forensic technology are so sensitive, they can analyze DNA from just a few cells. Fourth is the STR method, short tandem repeats. It is using gold standard in forensic DNA testing. These markers focus on specific areas of DNA that vary greatly among individuals. So by analyzing these regions, scientists create unique DNA profiles. So in North America, the CODIS system uses 20 core loci for STR analysis. This method can generate approximately match probabilities as high as in 1 in quintillion. So CODIS method is database that store DNA profile from convicted offenders. It is for the case of the person who is a convicted offenders. Crime in the crime scene. It is used in the crime scene. Arrestee and the crime scene's evidence. So it allows law enforcement to compare DNA profiles and find matches known as hit. And that match is known as a hit. So how CODIS work? DNA profile development, database search, hit identification. If there is a match, it is called hit. Confirmation. And an example, what is the example of CODIS, combined DNA index system? In a case without a suspect, if any crime case, there is no suspect, a DNA profile from the crime scene was matched to a profile in combined DNA index system, leading to the identification of perpetrators. So this type of forensic DNA testing method is important for grasping how forensic science solve crimes and gives justice and ensures justice. So it is about the full match CODIS and it is a partial match CODIS. Example is given. Full match and partial match. So application of forensic DNA testing is used in criminal cases, property crimes. In that property crimes, touch DNA is used, violent crimes, sexual assault in this CODIS is used. Homicide also used in this DNA profiling is used to identify suspects and to give crucial evidence in court, in robberies and in unknown suspect. With the help of CODIS database. So these are the steps involved in forensic DNA analysis: collection, preservation, extraction, quantification, amplification, separation, analysis and interpretation, quality assurance. So methods of DNA analysis is short tandem repeat analysis. This method examines repeating sequence of DNA, and STR may vary differ among individual. STR, short tandem repeat, differ among different individual, allowing for reliable identification. A profile created from 15 or more STR region can confirm familial relationship. If you are creating a profile and that profile there is a 14, 15 or more than 15 STR region, it confirms there is a family relationship. STR are short, 5 to 7 or 2 to 7 base pair longs, and it is found in non-coding region of the genome. STR is found in non-coding region of the genome. The number of repeat at a specific STR varies between, locus will vary between individuals. So this variability is what makes STR important for individual identification. Second method is mitochondrial DNA analysis. Mitochondrial DNA analysis used when nuclear DNA is degraded, is destroyed. When nuclear DNA is destroyed, we use mitochondrial DNA to recover from poorly preserved remains. The preserve will be poorly destroyed. So mitochondrial DNA is easy to recover from poorly preserved remains. It is passed on maternally, enabling identification through maternal relatives, from mother relatives. Y chromosome analysis is focused on, as word indicates, Y chromosome, which is from father. So it is useful when close male relatives are available for comparison, allowing identification through paternal lines. So mitochondrial from mother line and chromosomal Y analysis from paternal line. Next one is about the methods of DNA analysis is SNPs. It is used for highly degraded the DNA. When the DNA is highly degraded, when we use this technology, SNP, which is a unique, these are SNP are unique variation in the DNA sequence. They can be identified using reference sample from personal items. Also, although this method is less effective than STR analysis, and STR analysis is more effective and SNP are less effective. So this is about the short tandem repeats, which is a DNA profiling technique which is used to identify individuals by examining a specific region of DNA. 6 repeats AGTC 6 repeats, 8 repeats GA, 8 repeats, short tandem repeats. Again, individuals, AGTC 5 repeats and GA 5 repeats. Here 6 repeats, 8 repeats, and here 5 repeats, 5 repeats, the same base sequence. So this contains repeating sequence of nucleotide bases which present in the non-coding sequence of genome. STR analysis is important in forensic science, paternity testing, and other application used where individual identification is important. So it is about the STR. SNP analysis, single nucleotide polymorphism, which is less effective than STR. See, only the one nucleotide base sequences differ. So these variations called SNP are fundamental to understanding genetic diversity, their impact on traits, disease susceptibility, and drug response. So there are some challenges in DNA identification. The process of collecting DNA from crash sites when the incident happened on 12th June 2025. It can be lengthy. So for instance, after the September 11 attacks, it took 10 months to collect samples from nearly 3,000 victims. The scale of the tragedy directly impacts the speed of DNA identification. Importance of timely, there is a need of timely action. So timely collection and analysis of DNA are important or vital in ensuring that victims are identified accurately, precisely, compassionately. There is also emotion burdens from families to help in identification process. Next news is about new jumping spider species. Recent research has revealed, has discovered a new species of jumping spider in southern India. This species belong to subfamily Spatuli. So it marks the first discovery of genera Spachius and Sonoita in India. Previously, these genera were only known from Southeast Asia and Africa. Now it is seen in India, in southern India. The study led by John Caleb TD from Savita Medical College, who marks the rich biodiversity of the region. About discovery, the newly identified species named Spachius kerigiri is named after Kerigiri, a locality in Karnataka. So these male spiders were found hiding in rocky crevices. Females were observed guarding their egg clutches. Additionally, these specimens were discovered in Tamil Nadu's Villupuram district as well. So these research, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu research involved a collaborative effort, together effort from various experts across India. What are the significance of this discovery? It expands the known range of Spatini subfamily in India. The keen eyesight and unique hunting method of these spiders are really noteworthy. They often mimic prey to deceive other spiders. It is a quality of these spiders to mimic prey to deceive other spiders, showcasing their intelligence. Additionally, the identification of Sonaita cliff lickfooty, previously thought to be confined to Africa, raises question about its presence in India. So about taxonomic classification, the study has resolved confusion regarding Malpisa gigantisnia. The species described in 2005, and it was confirmed to be the same as Phaseus pimperatus first described in 1900. This clarification improves the understanding of spider taxonomy in India also. So despite these findings, much of India's diverse terrains remain underexplored, underdiscovered. So the study indicates that many more spider species are yet to be discovered. So there is a need of continued research, continuous research in this area, which is essential to fully understand the different types of biodiversity of spiders in India. So this is about current affairs, science and technology from 15th June to 22nd June 2025. Kindly watch the next episodes. Like, share and subscribe the video. Hit the bell icon and comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching.